Alright, hi class. We're going to get started on our final Banksy compositions here. I have a couple portraits of Marcel Duchamp that I wanted to play around with. The photo that I started with is very similar to this, but it's this one instead. And what I've gone ahead and started doing is pulling out the darkest shapes. And it's really important that you treat this sort of like carving a pumpkin. Every time that you make a line, it has to be closed so that way you make an entire shape. And you need to make sure that those shapes do not hug each other. So we talked about before, like the eyeball inside of the pumpkin eye, and how you can't do that because this little part would fall through. So every shape has to be completely surrounded by white space that will keep it anchored. And so I went ahead and started not just outlining these shapes, but just to help give me a good idea of what it's going to look like when it's all spray painted in. I went ahead and used a Sharpie. You could also use like a pencil or a colored pencil. And I just kind of loosely colored it in, so that way when I squint at it, I can get the illusion of what it will look like when I spray paint it. I have some really intricate shapes down here in the eyeball. That's definitely going to be one of the trickier parts of doing this particular piece. So I'm going to have to be really careful if I want that little white space inside of the eye that's like a little reflection. I have to be careful about how I cut that out. So you're basically reducing all of these black and white tones into either black or white. And you just have to choose basically which of the shadows are dark enough to make them an entire black shape, and which ones are light enough to leave alone. And since this is the first step, it really is okay if you start coloring something in that you're not happy with. You can just decide not to transfer that part onto your final composition. So at this point, I feel pretty good about where I'm going here. I like the way this looks. So what I'm going to start doing is transferring this onto my plain white piece of poster board. I have a 12 by 18 piece of poster board, nice and big, and just kind of like your name stencils, I want to try to center it in the middle here. Also, please note, I have my name in the bottom corner, but I want to keep it pretty centered. So when I arrange all these pieces, I'm going to think about where the face is going to go. I'm also going to think about where I want my text to go. And if you printed your text out and you are satisfied with how it's arranged, then that's fine. If you want to play around with the arrangement of your letters, you are free to do that at this stage. So if I don't like how this is off center, I'm just going to cut these little rows apart, and I could arrange it so that way I have my Marcel Duchamp here in the center. And I put the Great Artist right underneath. Of Tomorrow will go underground. Okay, so I'm going to tape, I'm not taping anything down to the poster board yet, but I do like this arrangement. So I'm going to go ahead and just tape some of these little pieces together so they don't move around on me too much. If they have a little bit of wonk, that's not a big deal because it's street art, so it shouldn't be 100% precise. Okay, so like I said, all of that is still loose from the poster board. Oops, maybe I need one more little piece. There we go. So now what I need to do is trace all of this in the center of my poster board. And to help me with that, I have tracing paper. There's two varieties in my classroom. There's this one that looks purple and shiny black on one side, and this one which has writing on one side and it's shiny black on the other. These sides are identical. They do the exact same thing. And the purple or the writing, these are the backs of both paper. It really does not matter which one you use. So I'm going to go ahead and use the purplish one right now. When I trace, I need to make sure that this shiny black side, this is sort of like the part that has the, like the graphite that's in your pencil, that's on this shiny black side. So I want that to be facing down on my poster board. And my Marcel Duchamp picture is going to go right on top of it. And at this point, I can go ahead and put a couple pieces of tape down. I don't want to tape it too much, just enough that it's not going to move around while I'm tracing. But I'm going to tape all the layers together. And the nice thing about using just a couple of pieces is I can periodically still turn this down to make sure that I'm tracing exactly what I need to be tracing. And to do the tracing part, you can use any sort of a pointy object. You can even use a mechanical pencil that doesn't have the lead out, because the tip of it works really nice, just to press right along those lines. And basically what you're doing is just pressing that shiny black carbon onto the paper. Now, while this works, the thing is I can't tell what I've already traced. So I actually prefer to use a colored pencil, something that'll stand out so I can see where I have been and what still needs to be traced. So I'm going to fast forward so you can see what this looks like in the end. Alright, now I'm going to take everything off of the poster board and see what we got. Alright, say overall I'm very pleased with that. One thing to kind of keep in mind here is the tracing paper is reusable, so please be really careful about taking it apart from all of your tape. It's okay if you tear it a little bit, but please do remove the tape so that way it doesn't all stick together when we put it back into the box. Alright, so at this point, as long as you're satisfied with this, you really don't need these parts anymore. So I'm going to put that off to the side there. If you're looking at the lines that you've made and you still feel a little unclear about where all the shapes start and end, you're more than welcome to take a marker or any sort of utensil and clarify the beginning and ending of those shapes. So I could go back over each one of these shapes to make sure that they start where they end and that I have no conflicting areas that will result in a giant hole in the middle of the paper. But for the most part, I can pretty much see the outlines of everything. Now, some of my letters got a little skimpy. I'm not going to lie, my hand was definitely cramping by the time I got down here. So what I might want to do before I especially cut out the lettering is to go back and re-outline some of those areas. And then once you have everything outlined and you're ready to go, then you can go ahead and use your X-Acto knives to start cutting out those shapes to create your final Banksy piece.